Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great time at CroshCon so far. I'm very honored that Crosh asked me to speak a little bit about the focus of my research and to be part of today's event. So to get started, the focus of my research essentially revolves around examining the medical device user interfaces that nurse users work with. So by examining how these medical devices are designed and interacted with, we can observe how this shapes how nurses perform and can impact their quality of work life. So today's talk is titled Medical Device User Interfaces, a Hidden Burden. And just a little quick roadmap for today's talk I have presented here. So I'm essentially going to touch on medical devices and the nurse users today, poorly designed user interfaces as an OHS risk, the need for increased research, and I will also present a user interface example to help tie everything in together. So when I say medical devices, I'm specifically referring to the equipment that possesses a sophisticated and programmable user interface. So to simplify this definition, you can picture any medical device that has a display screen and input controls that can exchange information between the device and the user. Popular devices include your typical intravenous IV infusion pumps, vital sign monitors, defibrillators, and so on. So if you were to walk into a hospital today, you'd be hard pressed not to find medical devices throughout the building. And these user interfaces, which from now on I'm just going to refer to as UIs, these UI designs possess their own unique interaction methods, which are determined by medical device manufacturers. And a level of expectation among the public exists regarding the level of effectiveness and safety of all medical devices. So this expectation is hindered by medical device UI designers who have free rein on the UI designs that healthcare professionals, such as nurses, are forced to frequently interact with. So in the majority of instances, medical device manufacturers and designers are generally not the product's end users. And as a result, it is common for a mismatch of knowledge to exist when manufacturers and designers without a background in healthcare are at the helm of designing how medical devices are interacted with. So as a result, devices are created that go against the natural flow of how nurses complete tasks and forces them to reorient how they work to accommodate how the device was designed. So this can often lead to nurses developing workarounds to use the medical device in a manner that better suits their needs. And ultimately, using a device in a manner that it was not intended to be used can increase the risk to occupational health and safety, cognitive demands, and efficiency. So the complexity of this interaction is further complicated when considering the factors affecting a nurse's quality of work life. So such as interruptions, multitasking, stress, long shift hours, and so on. And this list really does go on. And it is known that the nurse population is viewed as vulnerable workers based on their high level of workload that contributes to stress and burnout that can negatively impact their quality of work life. And all of these factors are then compounded together and can lead to serious outcomes. So interacting with medical device UIs efficiently, let alone safely and correctly, has become increasingly challenging and precarious when considering the design freedom associated with medical device UIs and the demanding work pressures burdening nurses. As a result, this relationship nurses have with sophisticated medical device UIs and the unique context of their work can impact their quality of work life when delivering care with varying medical device UI designs. So this is a popular slide that I like to present just to show a small snapshot of the level of variety in user interface design that can exist for one single type of medical device. So displayed on this slide are 18 infusion pump medical device UIs. All of the devices on the slide accomplish the very same task. So to intravenously infuse a solution into a patient in a controlled manner. But as you can see, all 18 infusion devices possess a unique physical user interface design. And this isn't even taking into account the different software designs that would accompany each interface. So for example, you could think of it as how to navigate through the menus, how the data is presented to the user, and so on. And I would also like to note that these are only a few of the designs, as this is how many I could comfortably fit on the slide as well. So there's a lot more. So a need exists for this research, considering the number and types of medical devices continue to increase and are inescapable in today's healthcare environments. And in addition, the technological sophistication of these medical devices continue to possess more advanced abilities. And as a result, increased attention and scrutiny is needed to evaluate whether these medical devices and their intended users are interacting effectively to produce a greater level of safety and efficiency, as well as fewer medical device related adverse events. And the importance of this research lies in its potential to reveal how medical device user interfaces possess a greater role in impacting nurse-user interactions. So let's look at a small subsection of UI design that some would consider insignificant in its impact on user performance when interacting with these medical device UIs, and that is icons and symbols. So with the increased proliferation of technological interfaces in personal, public, and professional contexts, the icons and symbols that accompany UIs are constantly bombarding device operators. So icons and symbols are littered everywhere, and as much as they can ease and expedite use wherever they are placed, they can just as easily cause confusion. So in the literature, there's this common viewpoint that icons and symbols, they're often seen as an international language that when designed effectively can in turn reduce translation and just simplify learning. Although icons and symbols possess an international look and feel to their functionality, the interpreter's knowledge and past experiences and the context in which the icon or symbol is being interpreted should not be overlooked when examining how this influences user interpretations. And if we look at Health Canada's guidance document regarding general medical device labeling, they express that medical device labeling should be presented at a level that is on par with the training of expected users in order to be used safely and without generating any unnecessary harm. So this is a pretty broad and unspecific statement that inherently leaves a large gray area for manufacturers to have free rein in justifying how their labeling is sufficient for their target end users. And the result of these icon and symbol use stipulations for medical devices results in this kind of Wild West perspective on what manufacturers can get away with. Because in their eyes, as long as an up-to-date glossary is included and the symbols that require text follow these guidelines, manufacturers are considered to be following the rules, even if they are ultimately increasing the burden of end users like nurses to correctly interpret their symbols. So I just want to present a standout piece of research that was found in the literature, and it comes from a study conducted by Taylor et al. In 2019. So the researchers reviewed 25 different electrosurgical unit models, so ESUs, from 10 different manufacturers. And just to provide some really quick context, electrosurgical units, so ESUs, they're medical devices that are staple in operating rooms as they utilize high frequency electrical currents just to cut tissue and control bleeding through the use of specialized probe attachments and foot pedals and so on. So unfortunately, manufacturers of these ESUs are inconsistent in their use of terms and icons for labeling components that are common across models, which as a result can cause confusion among nurse users and increase the potential for erroneous ESU configuration as well. So the researchers found that of the 25 devices selected to be examined, 14 different combinations of terms and or icons existed when examining a single device function associated with the monopolar pencil receptacle attachment. So basically just one of the device's accessories. And in addition to this finding, inconsistencies were seen in the terms and icons used to label the attachment, both within and across manufacturers. So considering the variability in terms and icons used in these ESU models and the prevalence of multiple ESU models in the surgical environment, there's considerable risk for misinterpretation and erroneous configuration of these types of devices. So of the 165 nurse participants involved in the research study, 96% reported using an ESU almost daily. And in addition, as you can see on the slide here, 22% used only one ESU model, 35% used two, 26 using three, and 17% using four or more ESU models during the previous 6 months period at the time of the study, therefore revealing that 78% of nurses had used two or more ESU models during the previous 6 months. And I just wanted to show this figure that was taken from Taylor et al.'s research study. And this shows the 14 combinations of icons and terms that were associated with the attachment. So if we fill in the shoes of a nurse who is operating numerous ESUs, it's easy to see how one's cognitive burden, which you can think of as mental workload and stress, can increase from attempting to distinguish which symbol and its corresponding function is attached to which device that they are using on that day. And of course, the negative impacts to occupational health and safety are obvious when considering the mental gymnastics that a nurse performs to ensure that a symbol is being properly interpreted based on the specific ESU device being used at the time. So for the research presented thus far, it's easy to deduce that icons and symbols designed in a non-optimal manner can put the end user at a disadvantage. So end users such as nurses, they bear the brunt of the burden when attempting to decipher these icons and symbols. Your increased stress, multitasking, interruptions, long shift hours, and so on are already placing nursing staff at a disadvantage. So to additionally burden the nurse with confusing or unintuitive icons and symbols may decrease their safety, their satisfaction, confidence, and efficiency when interacting with these medical devices. So from the example presented, it's easy to observe how a UI's design and characteristics can significantly influence the occupational health and safety of its users while assuming an under the radar presence. And to some, selecting an icon or symbol for a medical device function can be perceived as just really like this minor aesthetic decision. However, it's clear to see how it can impact a device's safety and efficiency of use. And it's also important to situate this example within a larger context. Icons and symbols, they aren't the only characteristics of UI design that can give way to occupational health and safety impacts. So design elements such as the terms and labels used in an interface, the interface's menu path structure and how it is designed to be navigated, which information is presented to the user and how, and differing interface input mediums are only a few design elements that can greatly affect end users. Because at the end of the day, nursing personnel already have enough on their plate to juggle, and we shouldn't be introducing an additional burden onto these nurses. So the main reason why I think more attention should be paid to analyzing and improving user interface designs, especially for medical devices, is because this hidden burden on users actually perpetuates these poor designs into the next generation of medical devices. So, when the majority of nurses blame themselves for misinterpreting and incorrectly interacting with these medical devices, the understanding is that one, they should have been more careful, two, that they require additional training on the device, or three, perhaps that they're just incompetent. When in reality, UI design flaws can be setting the nurse up for failure before they even start using the device. So finally, we must ask the question, how can we expect nurses to perform safely and optimally when the devices that they are using are not designed safely or optimally? And just to recap what we talked about today, so we revealed a small snapshot of how medical device UIs can greatly shape a nurse user's performance, their risk to occupational health and safety, and their quality of work life. And in addition, however minor and trivial a UI design characteristic may seem, it can significantly influence how a user interacts with that device and thus impacts the user's level of their efficiency, safety, and so on. And additional research is needed to continue to uncover and increase the awareness of these UI design concerns and their impacts to users. And I hope I was able to shed a bit of light onto a disadvantage that nurse users can experience when, when interacting with incongruently designed medical device UIs. So thank you everyone so much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Amy. That was a great start to CrossCon. That was a fascinating talk. And personally, I have a personal real interest in user design. So that was really fantastic. We do have a few questions from the audience. We've got time for a few. So are there, so the first one, are there any posters posted on the hospitals that you're aware of to support users and nurses with understanding the symbols on UI? So I guess, is there much knowledge translation kind of materials out in hospitals that you're aware of or that you've seen?
Essentially what I'm aware of in terms of these public kind of postings of these materials, that's not something that I believe is currently existing in hospitals, or it's just not that, I guess, prevalent. But essentially, if anything happens if you get into like these legal issues with, oh, you didn't correctly interpret these symbols, a lot of the times the manufacturers come back with, well, we provided a glossary that is accompanied in the device's essentially their manual. And before using our devices, uh, the user should be well versed in reading the manual and referring to the glossary, um, just as like a reference in order to prevent those kind of errors from happening. But if you look at real world nursing, that isn't always the case. It isn't always efficient to have like a lot of text nearby that's associated with the devices that you're using. And also, these manufacturers are essentially saying that, well, they have to essentially write that the symbols that they're incorporating onto their device are intuitive enough that you essentially don't need to constantly be referring to a, essentially like a exterior piece of like text in order to use a device efficiently. So yeah, that's essentially the whole scope of what's happening in terms of resources available to correctly determine what these symbols mean in real world practice.